So watching her, I thought was really exciting, and so I just wanted to see who else could be a groundbreaker, who could lead the charge into new territory. And it turns out, by the time the night was over, there were several. The first female Muslim in Congress, 2 female Native Americans in Congress, the first openly gay governor elected at the time they were elected, so they ran as that in their campaign. I mean, I just think, as Valerie said, diversity scored some big wins.
I just remember being fascinated by almost every major race in Florida. The race for governor between, I forget his first name, DeSantis, who right now has won the governorship, and a lot of his, normally we use the phrase like dog whistle when it comes to racist phrasing and extremely racially charged phrasing, but he was using straight up whistle, not just a dog whistle, versus Andrew Gillum, who was a extremely charismatic African American candidate, and Florida opted. It was a narrow race, it was very narrow, it was a captivating race. Also, I was fascinated by Florida approving voting rights for felons who had served their term. That is something that I think is long overdue, not necessarily voting rights for felons, but definitely the life of a felon who has served his sentence is extremely difficult. I think we as Americans owe it to these people who are trying to get their lives back on track to give them some path to normalcy, and I think extending the vote to them was there a non?
I think they had Kelsey Grammer on their side too.
No kidding.
Yeah, he was on some ads I saw on my school.
Kelsey Barber doesn't have a record, does he?
No, I think he had a family member or something.
Okay.
He had some connection to
Was there a non-Missouri race that was interesting to you, Ann?
Well, I thought there were several. The Georgia governor's race.
That's still ongoing.
Still ongoing.
And it is the temperature could not be turned up higher on
Right. Kemp has, well, I looked this morning, had 50.3%, and if he doesn't maintain that 50%, they have to have a runoff.
Yeah.
So Oprah had gone down and campaigned for his opponent, and I was really watching that one. And then my class had watched in Arizona. There is a congressional seat, Paul Gosar.
Yeah.
About him? And his family made these commercials totally bashing him.
Yeah. His own family
He won by
reported a commercial.
60%.
Yeah.
So
his Thanksgiving in about a week and a half from now is going to be.
Well, the newspaper said his mom still supported him, so.
That's great. So let's take a little bit to talk about some of these ballot issues. Got such massive ballot issues, Cara. What conclusions can we draw from how Missourians voted on these ballot issues?
Oh man. Well, hey, I know that 65% of all U.S. adults approve the use of medical marijuana, but only 45% of Republicans do. And so I think for Missouri, the ballot initiative, kind of the dynamic we talked about earlier, just that it's becoming more individualized. And I think that that's due to the outreach and kind of the hype that this midterm had. Larger celebrities, Google, Jimmy Fallon, whoever it was, bringing people, no matter the age, and even kind of maybe changing the culture a little bit, that voting was the cool thing to do. So I think all of that, the ballot initiatives, I think it was great that that passed. I think, what was the other interesting one? I was upset the road tax didn't pass. I know you don't want to talk about that, but I was super just disappointed. I think citizens cannot expect services from their state unless they're being funded. I mean, you can't, the state of Missouri, it's financially okay right now.
matching dollars for that too.
Exactly.
So you got to double your money.
Sure, and Missouri's doing a little bit better financially right now than they have. I mean, even OTC's higher education budget was cut 10% 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And it's, Mike Parsons has been great and it's improved, but that could potentially come from higher education funds. I mean, you can't have a bridge that's gonna fail and kill lives. Or are you gonna fund the A+ program? I mean, even OCAD or other programs that just could be cut from that, so
What are your thoughts, Rose, on Amendment 1 on Clean Missouri? It passed comfortably, 24%, and it got a ton of national. Jennifer Lawrence reported a commercial for it. It got a ton of attention.
I'm telling you, Missouri is, we were just a magnet for attention this time around. Well, it was a very interesting ballot proposal, and for those of you that were in the voting booths for the very first time, you know, I was thinking about you when that one was kind of right there at the top, because it was kind of complicated to read. And the takeaway I have from that is, we all live to tell, right? You know, it wasn't as bad as some of your OTC tests, you know, to have a ballot test. But I think that anytime you have something that's that complicated, there were a lot of things going on in that proposal, that now that it's passed, sort of making it real, what's it gonna look like 5 years from now? Will some of those provisions sort of be conflicting? I mean, I don't know. I think it's hard to say at this point. I'm not quite, I don't want to say I'm not optimistic about it. I think transparency is a great thing, but I think that, you know, time will tell on that one, whether it accomplishes what everyone hoped that it would.
I hope.
The gerrymandering is so sticky. And just for anybody who might not be privy to that term, gerrymandering is the partisan drawing of lines, of congressional district lines for political advantage. And Missouri is, like most states, very gerrymandered. And I don't know how to fix that problem. Amendment 1 was an earnest attempt at it. And this was an amendment that was resisted largely by the Republicans in this state. The medical marijuana, Amendment 2 was largely resisted by Republicans in the state. And Proposition A that we voted back in August, resisted by Republicans in the state. A jack up in the minimum wage were resisted by Republicans. And it makes sense of this to me. Why is a state that is increasingly Republican? We are a red state.
Right.
But our ballot measure, you'd confuse us for California.
Well, I think it may have something to do with socioeconomics too. I think that those are working class issues, and folks that maybe don't make a lot of money probably are for medical marijuana. They're for higher wages, but they're not for paying more for their gas. I think that could have a lot to do with it.
I don't understand. Valerie, makes sense of this to me, because you made a really interesting point earlier about individualized voting behavior. We're talking hundreds of thousands of Missourians voted for raising the minimum wage, and en masse for Republicans that are opposed to that very thing. How is that possible? Are Missourians making a mistake, or I assume there's got to be some pattern of socioeconomic or just normal human behavior that I'm not figuring out here?
I have to agree. Socioeconomics, I think, has a lot to do with it, because we see minimum wage workers, and we see that it is very individualized on, okay, what's going to work for me? What's going to work? Although I may associate with a political party, what's going to work when it's all said and done at the end of the day? What's going to work for me? What can my government do for me? And we've gone so much more beyond an either-or type of ideology. You think either this way if you're Republican, or either this way if you're a Democrat. But it's gone so much more beyond that now in 2018. And we have so many more issues facing us. And so many more things affecting us, affecting our families, affecting our livelihood, affecting our, perhaps down the road, responsibilities.
True or false, Anna? Well, first let me make a statement. Since Trump has been elected, a lot of people were real concerned the Democratic Party was legitimately on the ropes. They bounce back, they take the House. True or false? Democratic Party was saved in 2018 thanks to the efforts of women.
I would say that's partially true. I think that it's thanks to women and minorities. There were huge rallies of minorities in Florida and other states where there are large minority populations. There were huge rallies in Miami, I know. There were 4 Latino women actresses that had big rallies, places to get minorities out to vote. And I think women are a big part of that as well.
I agree with you. I should have mentioned minorities as well. The racial divide in voting behavior is deepening, I feel like there's a significant cleaving in white people running towards the Republican Party, non-whites running towards the Democratic Party. Can you account for that? What is
Yes.
pushing people in different directions, in your opinion?
I think that it's the president. I think that the president and what he states a lot of times is racially charged, and he seems to gravitate towards those things. And I think that the attitude of the country reflects our leadership.
Rose, do you agree with that analysis? Or do you think that's, I don't know, how do you feel about that analysis from Anna?
Well, I think to a certain extent, political parties are irrelevant to a lot of people. I still think it's funny that they spend so much time developing a platform with the seeming thought that you all are going to go read those platforms and you're going to vote accordingly, just like you were shopping for a coffee and checking out the stuff on the side of the box. I mean, I think most people, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people just find political parties irrelevant. But other issues they engage with, and in some ways, I mean, if you look at our ballot measures, you can kind of see, you can follow a logical trend. I mean, why raise gas tax while you're also trying to raise the minimum wage? I mean, do you accomplish anything for people in that category of earnings? No, I mean, I think there's just some independent thinking of voters saying, I'm going to vote according to how I see the plan of things. And we also have to remember that humans make exceptions, all the time. We make exceptions, and we do sometimes with regard to our political parties and our political ideologies. We think, yes, 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 but here, no.
What do you mean when you say political parties are irrelevant?
Well, I think a lot, what, our book tells us, edition after edition, that most people classify themselves as independents. They will not claim a political party as being their party. Even though other studies show that if you set those people down and you really question them by their answers, you might characterize them as being maybe Republican. And that's how they sometimes account for the fact that Republicans do better than their numbers would suggest at the polls. But, in terms of the mind of the person who's sitting there answering those survey questions and being characterized by somebody else, what difference does that make to them,
Yeah, but they're irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because I disagree with that. I disagree with the analysis that most people are independent. If you combine people that identify as Republicans and Democrats, it dwarfs people that consider themselves independents. 98 of our 100 seats in the Senate are controlled by political parties. Close to 100%, if not exactly 100%, are controlled by the political parties.
Sure, that's absolutely true, and that's a frustration of the American people, that you cannot, at this point, separate party politics from the institution of the Congress itself. So in terms of like getting committee seats and holding on to power, there's no doubt that political parties are entrenched. They're incredibly relevant to Congress. Don't mistake what I'm saying there, but in terms of the average person going about their life, at points in their life, they may tune in and tune out with regard to a certain political party, but I don't think that they see political parties as the boss of them.
Valerie, doesn't that to a certain extent account for the president? Because the president ran in a pretty standard Republican primary with a lot of standard Republicans. But at least when he was campaigning, he was saying things like going to save Medicare. I'm going to make sure everybody is covered with health insurance. Rich people need to pay more in taxes. Doesn't what Rose is talking about, the fact that the two-party choice is too simplistic to describe the American fabric, that Trump kind of explains some of that complexity?
Okay, well, I'm gonna kind of take it back to the actual campaign cycle and kind of the campaign dynamic. Yes, we have organized representation of the masses. We have Republicans and Democrats, a dominant two-party system. But when you start to break it down and start to really look at voting behavior, and when we get closer and closer to a campaign, then all of a sudden it becomes, yes, we have the parties, and we have corporations, and we have, campaign funding. So, and our own innate sense of political socialization about, well, my parents voted Republican, or my parents voted Democrat. We still have that in us, but that's kind of just what's been instilled in us. Not saying we vote how our parents vote, but that's still part of our political socialization, brought up with the parties. But then as it gets closer through the campaign cycle, then it does become more about the ideology. But the dominant two-party system still has a very large presence. But the ideology itself and the issues then start to kind of become very much more individualized. To say we're completely independent, I think we're quite a ways from that as far as, and I talk to my students about this a lot with why have an independence, or why has an independent party? Yes, they've had an impact in elections. If it's anything, even a counter vote, that's fine. But why haven't independents been able to really make that huge impact? So we talk about
because of the winner-take-all election system. Isn't that right? Cara, what happens now? We have Democrats controlling the House, Republicans
Yes.
controlling the Senate.
Yes.
What's the, so we have seen a change of hands in the House. What the heck is the biggest change we are going to see from that swapping?
Absolutely. And just to follow up, I agree with you, and I appreciate Rose's outlook. I couldn't help but thinking how my own family, I feel like parties are charged more now than ever. Like, there's people not even coming to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And how many times we see on Facebook, if you don't like this, unfriend me.
Yeah.
Like,
I've seen that
so
a lot.
volatile.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
I don't think I ever saw that under
right?
Bush. Well, I don't know if I was, but anyways, definitely hadn't seen it under Obama.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the question at hand. I think what we're gonna see now is a little more nitpicking of Mr. Trump's administration. I think investigations, I think it's gonna be, oh man, so many great tweets. I can't wait. And I think it's gonna be a little more babysitting of that. I think maybe there might be some more accountability on his side. I think the cabinet's gonna have to step up. I think there's gonna be maybe just a more poking, just like, hey, show me what you're doing, transparency. I think there's gonna be a demand for that. So I'm hoping that that really happens.
We have bipartisan hope, do we not? Or is bipartisan hope dead?
I think it depends on how the Republicans decide, or how the Democrats decide to act.
That does not bode well.
I think it depends on who they elect as Speaker of the House. I think it depends on if they want to
Nancy
try
Pelosi.
right, that's probably who it's gonna be.
So therefore,
So if Nancy Pelosi decides that she wants to put the hammer down, then we're gonna have a super contentious, divided government.
so
And it's gonna be nasty.
I can see the future. Democrats, correct me, please tell me that my prediction is wrong. Democrats will say, now that we control the House, we look forward to working with Republicans. Republicans controlling the Senate, we say we look forward to working with Democrats. Trump says, I welcome all of this is awesome. Democrats, on day one, issue a subpoena for Trump's tax returns. Trump
And all of his business records.
Trump breaks the internet with 15 tweets at 4 in the morning. And he will declare war on the Democrats. Democrats will declare war on him and on Republicans.
Started. I mean, he fired Jeff Sessions yesterday.
Who's Jeff Sessions?
The Attorney General of the United States.
Why is that significant that the president fired? Did he fire?
Made him quit.
He said he resigned.
He did fire him. He was asked to resign.
Okay, so he's like,
Yeah.
here's the door.
Right.
If you walk through it, it's your choice.
He was escorted out of the building.
So why is that significant that Trump fired his Attorney General?
Right, so Jeff Sessions was opposed to the president on one big issue that he wouldn't back down on, which was the Mueller investigation.
The Mueller investigation to Russia
yes,
collusion.
To the Russia collusion, right.
Alleged.
Right, and so Trump had been putting Sessions under pressure to fire Mueller and to let him go and end the investigation. And yesterday he showed Sessions the door. So Whitaker is the guy that is the interim and is assumed to take over, and he has been very critical of the Mueller investigation, and so we'll see what happens with that.
Rose, scale of 1 to 10. Jeff Sessions being shown the door. Scale of 1 to 10. How important is this issue, do you think?
Well, I think it's really important, but that may sort of show you the bias of my age, because I'm old enough to remember the Watergate investigation, so